and gentlemen, welcome to our first in the new series of Tightrope Post Mortems. This is a show that is built to discuss and analyze web series with a panel of fellow web series creators, writers, directors, and different types of talent. This is not a show that is an exercise in butt kissing. It's also not an insult parade. We're here to have a serious discussion and really tear apart the show, talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the innovative. Joining us tonight, our panelists are, starting from left to right, Miss Ande Richards of Good Times.
Hello.
We also have Miss Allison Vanore of Cost of Capital.
Hello.
And over here we have Mr. Robb Padgett of the upcoming Ladies and Gents and Vampirism Werewolf. I am James Fernandez, your host this evening. Also, this is a different bit of a show. I'm also the representative of the show being torn apart tonight in the post-mortem. Tonight's show, what we'll be dissecting is Vampirism Bites, Season 3. We're only doing Season 3. We're going to show you the teaser for that right now, and then we're going to start with the discussion. Let's start our game.
Well, I hope thousands of people are watching this.
There always are thousands and thousands of people watching.
Always.
Every Google Hangout.
All right, so in that particular case, it was playing on my side. That'll be something interesting to do for broadcast. We'll see if my window is the one that's broadcast or if it's just like a conglomeration. But we did play the trailer.
So it played?
It did play on my end, yep. I used the YouTube app connected here. Yes, I get applause.
Woohoo!
All right, so as the presenter, I'll be taking the role of the presenter this evening as well. I'll be presenting my show, Vampirism Bites Season 3. The number of episodes for this particular season was technically 14. We had 13, and then we had an epilogue that was 3.x. We showed the original release of the material starting in September of 2012, going through to technically February of 2013. The season itself ended in December, and then we did the epilogue a couple months later on Valentine's Day. For us this time, the two of you, I know Allison and Robb actually helped dissect Vampirism Bites Season 2 when we were testing out the format for the show last year. The same equipment was used as last time. I had two Canon HG10s. I used Premiere Pro in order to do the editing, as well as After Effects, both of them 5.5. The strengths I had in this year's production, I felt a lot more confident in executing a story, and I also made sure I like talkity talk stuff. I love it. I'm a huge fan of The West Wing. I watch like the entire series once a year. But from last season, I learned that I have to start having more action, especially considering the type of things we put in there. So I definitely felt a lot more confident trying to execute physical comedy, combat to raise tension, things like that. Also, another strength was the cast felt a lot more comfortable. Didn't have a lot of new additions in there, so they were able to sort of gel together a lot more strongly. They were used to each other from the ones that we added. Our star Katie Laban finally got more comfortable being Belle since she was brand new last season in the lead role, and she definitely sort of took it over and took it into a new place without feeling like the new girl in the cast. Our biggest difficulties and our weakness in this particular year really came from a series of bad luck and personal tragedy. I lost my mom last year, literally 2 weeks before we were supposed to start shooting. All the stuff you saw with Belle at the Dracula's house, or her mom's house, as she calls her, that was about 2 weeks after my mom had passed away, because we had already had everything lined up. And if I didn't pull the trigger then with how tight everyone's schedules were, including an actor, Ryan Falchuk, who plays Vincent, he came all the way from Arizona, where he lives, to shoot his stuff, because he used to live here in Michigan. So our schedules made it to where there was no way I could just skip out on it. That definitely affected me. I think it affected me going through the process of shooting and everything. So some of the mistakes and stuff that I saw personally in there, I could definitely tell where they came from. Other than that, it was just a lot of bad luck that kept messing with schedules. Literally, we had freak thunderstorms. We had a flat tire that happened to one of our actors out of nowhere. One actor almost forgot to show up on a day. We had someone getting ill, really ill. We had another actor whose boyfriend got a nasty injury in a boating accident, and he had to get surgeries. A dog, one of our cast was watching for someone else, swallowed a bee and had an allergic reaction. That killed one of our shooting days. All this,
it keeps getting worse.
That was towards the end. We were actually getting to a point where we were in danger of losing the season because key scenes may not have been able to have been shot in the summer, and the foliage around us would have been remarkably different from something that happened a second before and a second after. It was just a really crazy series of bad luck and unfortunate events that definitely affected the production, but I think overall I just felt a lot more confident about this season, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say about the execution this time around. So first we will start from my left. We will start with the new girl, if you do not mind. We're going to start with Miss Ande Richards of Good Times. And whenever you are ready, go ahead and let us know what you think of Vampirism Bites Season 3.
Okay, well, it was interesting to hear your comments because I did not see the previous seasons, and one of the things I noticed was, especially in the first episode of Season 3, there was a lot of dialogue, a lot of banter, which I like banter as well, and when you said that you like talking, I was like, okay, that was evident, and I kind of felt myself hoping that you'd insert a bit more action, and you actually did do that as the episode progressed. So, good job on that. And one of the things I noticed in the initial episodes as well was a little bit of the production value. Your lighting was a bit harsh. It looked like you could have used maybe someone helping with just that aspect of production. There was some lighting that just wasn't working, that distracted me from the actual story. You want me to keep going?
Absolutely, yeah. The way we do in the format is each person gets to say their entire piece, and then after this we'll do a question and answer back and forth. But go ahead and say your entire piece. Yep.
Okay.
If there's stuff you want to save for later, you can save it for later. You don't have to do everything right now in case you want to see where other people go. But say as much as you want right off the top.
Okay. That was just an overall note. I thought your night shooting looked better than your day shooting, which is interesting because I always feel like there's more room for error when you're shooting at night and you have to artificially light. So I would pay attention to production value during day shoots. I thought the acting when it was on more of an ensemble worked better for me. I felt like in groups, there was maybe a support system, everyone could bounce off of everyone, and the dialogue and the characters really emerged for me. When it was one-on-one, sometimes it felt a little forced. at times. The dialogue didn't seem to flow as naturally as it did when you were in larger groups. And I know other things are going to come up as we go around and talk amongst ourselves. One of the weird things I noticed, and this might have been a choice, but when you had the Dracula's hair pulled back, I actually, for some reason, that just changed her character a little bit, and I was more involved in that character, and it's weird what a hairstyle can do, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. It's like a weird...
Sure, actually that was a choice. In the last season, the Dracula was trying to become a archetype doting mother, despite the fact that she's supposed to be like the queen in general, the vampire, so Belle was her opportunity to become a doting mom, and that's her sort of doting mom side. Hair pulled back, and she dresses more casually, and then when she's out in the field, it's the military jacket, and her hair's down, and all that kind of stuff. So that was definitely a choice.
So that was her mommy side, and then the other look is her badass side. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely works. It was definitely, noticeable that she softened a bit. And in that, I think her acting skills actually shown a bit more. So that was a good choice. I think that's all I have for now, and I'll kind of chime in as everyone else, gives theirs, or we get into more of a group discussion.
All right. Thank you very much, Andy.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, now I'll go over to her screen mate, Ms. Allison Vanore. Whenever you're ready, Allison, go ahead and give us the skinny on your take for VB3.
Sure. Well, I think that, number one, I think that you did a lot of things better in this season. And I did see improvement, and that was exciting to see. I do think that I still would like more action and more, blocking and movement. There were a lot of scenes where, we do have a lot of dialogue, and I like a lot of the dialogue there. But in order to keep the audience engaged, I feel like we need something visually to keep us, like, pulling us back in. And so there were a lot of scenes where people are just kind of standing or sitting. And I felt like if there was just even small action or movement, and I know obviously that makes the camera setups, it adds setups and time to do all those things, but I feel like it would keep us in the story even more if we were, if the visuals were changing. And I think in some scenes it works very well. There were scenes outside of the house on the lawn. There were multiple scenes like that where I felt like it really worked, in the cutting back and forth and the different camera angles and stuff. But then there were scenes where, the two girls are sitting at the table, or there's like 4 or 5 people standing around, and nobody really moves unless someone's going to attack someone. And I felt like the stagnant scenes, were hard to stay with. Even though I thought that the dialogue was interesting and what was going on, it was still hard to stay there. So I think that was overall like my biggest note, was just I wanted to see more happen there because I wanted to stay involved in it. And I think, overall I agree that I think the actor seemed a little more, comfortable. I think that I still had a hard time with the lead character, the lead actress. I think that she was maybe one of the weaker actors, and it was hard in scenes where it was her for a long period of time, especially earlier in the season, because I felt like a lot of her, dialogue and the things that you wrote for her, I don't feel like she was able to pull off a lot of those things. So it really made it hard for me to care about her. I cared about other characters, and she just kind of was that annoying little sister type of character, and I don't know if you were going for that, but I kind of felt more connected to other characters. And so, but overall I think that, outside of, some mistakes here and there, I think overall the quality was better than last season, and, I applaud you, and the episodes are very long, and so, I kept seeing as we were going, like, oh my god, these episodes keep getting longer and longer. So you had a lot of good content there. It just, obviously with time and money, you could have added extra setups and angles and stuff, and could have kept us more engaged for those longer episodes. So I'm trying to think of, there's so many little things that I can talk about. Let me think about. Oh, and there were quite a few moments where characters, especially early on, where characters were speaking to each other but facing away from each other. And while I feel like that can work in many situations, the length of time that they're speaking to each other when they're facing away just then felt odd. And so a few of those times I just felt it kind of pulled me out because I was like, wait, why is she still facing the other direction? It just felt really weird. But I think some of the actors, I thought their acting was really good, and I thought some scenes worked really, really well, and others maybe not as well. And I thought that the one episode, and I believe it was just the one episode where you had all the web series titles worked into the episode, I laughed out loud multiple times.
I have no idea what you're referring to. I would never do such a thing.
Yeah, I know. I must have been imagining it. And I thought. Of course, those are extremely inside, jokes. But for me, they worked on me. I don't know that they wouldn't work for anybody else. But then again, somebody who wasn't as familiar with all of the web series that we know about would have no idea that that's what that was.
Well, yeah, that was. I have no problem admitting that was an inside joke for us. But it was also a challenge to see if I could roll those titles in to conversations, so they didn't seem to stick out as harshly. I think the hardest one for me was doing Legend of Neil. Because I'm how on earth do I pull that into the conversation?
That was actually, I think, when I finally realized what you were doing, I was like, oh, no, he didn't just do
Yeah, anyone but me. I'm like, how do I have to have something with that? Yes, that was fun for me because it's like, can I roll these into conversation? So people who don't know the series, they'll just, it's this scene and it's these guys talking smack. But the people who had those series, they're going to know what I'm doing and, yell at me for it. So it's pretty good. It works.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. So I guess we could ask questions later, but I'm trying to think if I have anything else that I want to talk about right now. I think overall, because there weren't a lot of different setups and action happening, I felt like dialogue and scenes were going on too long. And I think another thing with that is I think your dialogue is really strong most of the time, and I feel like there's repetitive lines and ideas going on, and so I feel like there's sometimes where, and maybe it's the actors are kind of improvising certain things if maybe they didn't remember the lines and they're saying things over and over again. But I felt like there was a lot of repetition and things that were kind of could have been shorter, like we already got the point, or we already understand what's going on, and it doesn't need to be said again. So, I felt like maybe some scenes were kind of like, beating a dead horse, and we could, move on from them a little bit sooner. But not, but I think that if it was shot and cut, and had more options of different angles and stuff to go off of, maybe it wouldn't have felt that way. But yeah, that's it for me right now. I'd like to kind of hear what Rob has to say, and then I have some questions for you.
All right, sounds good to me. And with that, we will now move over to the aforementioned Mr. Robb Padgett.
So, okay, I think you really improved from last season, but you still have some of the old culprits, and one of them is that dialogue. That's not bad dialogue; it's just a lot of dialogue. And you said you like the West Wing. Well, there's a reason why they have those walk and talks. Because if they're going to talk, they're going to change the scenery. It doesn't even matter. I mean, they don't do anything. They just walk around and talk. But it matters to the audience. They need to move. The audience needs to see something if they're not going to hear something different. They need to see something different. But I think you could probably just get rid of a lot of that stuff. Personally, because the backstory is good that you have in the show, but it doesn't ever. I don't know what you're planning. I still feel like you're planning on getting someplace with it. Am I wrong?
There's places it can go. Whether we can do that right now or not, I definitely left it to where there is an end point if we're able to reach it.
I get the constant feeling that something is about to happen all the time, but it never quite gets there.
Part of that is definitely intentional.
All right. Well, I feel like we're stuck in a limbo. We're either hearing about something that happened before, or we're about to do something that might take 2 or 3 episodes. I mean, you've got one episode. It's episode 3, where it's just a conversation in the woods, and I don't think they even share the same frame.
They did. They actually did. The lighting in that particular part of the forest was a lot of why it looks so different, because one person was near a patch of trees where there was sun coming through, and the other one, the trees were completely blanking it. But they were actually in the same frame, strangely enough.
But they weren't in the same picture frame. I mean, they were in the same woods, but they weren't in the same frame. It almost felt like because you didn't color correct, because that happens all the time. I mean, every shot looks different, especially in some place like the woods where your light is changing. You take it into some kind of color correcting. I'm sure Premiere has some kind of color correcting function.
Yes, they did. I just don't think I may not have done a good enough job, quite honestly. It may be.
Yeah, because one of them was too blue-green, and one of them was nice and yellow-green, and they didn't quite match. And so it felt to me like the actors weren't available on the same day.
Sure. Okay, I see what you're saying.
It felt like you shot them on 2 separate days, and I think that's part of the problem with. I think that's probably why the group scenes feel more cohesive, is because sometimes the way you shoot the individual shots, you're getting better about it now. You have some over the shoulders and stuff, and you're dirtying the frame, and you're keeping people in the same shot. But they're cut between somebody isolated in a frame, and then somebody else isolated in another frame, and they're kind of talking at the edge of the frame, and you never quite get the idea that they're talking to each other.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I would put not afraid to shoot a little closer and shoot some dirty shots. I guess you're shooting 2 cameras at once?
Yes.
And you're running both of them?
This time I was able to have more assistance, but there were times where I was running them by myself, yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because there's some shots where is the last episode where the people all go back to heaven?
Yes.
They drop dead. I was surprised they were there.
From just from a storyline standpoint?
I was surprised that they were. I didn't realize that they were actually at the location with everybody else.
Ah, okay.
It pans over and they said, "Oh, they're dead." I thought they were like off. I don't know where I thought they were. I didn't think they were there. They were a little group of 4, and then there was 2 people or 3 people. I have a question too, because I totally understand the limited resources, and I actually think you're making your life difficult. I think you could make your life simpler by allowing the limitations to be the style of the show.
Okay.
And I feel like you're fighting against it. I feel like you're trying to make a show that you don't have the resources for. So what and that's not, it's not a slam or anything. I'm just trying to help you make a show cheaply.
Sure.
Like, why does this take place where it does? Why does this story take place where it does?
In what sense? As in, like, Midwest USA?
Yeah, Midwest USA with a bunch of outer suburbanites.
Well, the entire idea with that is that's the last place you're going to think to look for something like the Lord of the Vampires. Most people are going to be looking for, gothic New York City, some high-rise, if it's an ABC drama, or some sort of like old castle or things like that. So the entire idea that I put through all 3 seasons is that the last place anyone's going to look for those kind of creatures is suburbia. They're not going to look for them in Midwest USA. And actually, from season 1, Simon Polidori is just supposed to be a hack the entire time, and this sort of falls into his lap.
Okay, because that's missing to me. I didn't actually know why.
Okay.
And I didn't remember from the first season. And if Belle can tell us every 5 minutes that she's the daughter of Dracula, you can remind us why these people are in the Midwest.
Okay, that's fair.
Because we don't see anybody who isn't either a vampire or a hunter or somebody. We don't see them interact with people.
Mm-hmm.
There's no context. The vampires don't exist in context. The whole story is not contextualized. So that's sort of what I mean by...
It's sort of like the missing element for you.
Yeah, like I want to see the town or something. I mean, I know you're stealing shots, and that's fine. But steal them in a diner, steal them on a street, steal them.
Well, the bonus around my area, actually, we don't have to steal anything. They don't have that kind of stuff. Most of us, most of it was scheduling constraints. Actually, the first episode I shot way back when for season 0, the guy that owned the restaurant was fine with us shooting there. He had no problem whatsoever. So I can get those things. I think in the case of this, it was just trying to keep them in areas to tell our story where I didn't feel like I was potentially like interrupting other houses around the area, things like that. I think part of that was timidity on my part.
And I can completely understand that. So all I'm saying is keep the big scenes. No sword fighting in restaurants. You don't need that kind of stuff.
Unless that's what the restaurant owner wants.
Unless you're allowed to, and you've got all the time in the world.
Sure.
Just take 1 or 2 of your easiest to schedule actors and take them out of the park, the forest, the dining room, or the porch. Because this show pretty much takes place in those 4 places.
Sure.
Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I also had a problem with Belle.
Okay.
I liked her better last season.
Really? Okay. What changed for you?
She whines too much.
Okay.
There's a fine line, and I do it. Oh God, I do it too. So she should, if she watches this, she shouldn't think I'm bagging on her because I do the exact same thing. If you come across a little too needy on camera, you can get into that whiny stage where all of your lines start sounding like you're complaining. It's the Luke Skywalker syndrome, and I get it too. So I felt like she was a little bit whiny, a little too down on her situation, and not in an adult way.
I think part of that was intentional, but I think some of that falls on me with what I gave her to perform. Part of that was the fact that she started getting beat down with a ridiculous amount of crap going on around her, but I can see where I probably should have had her maybe toughen up a little bit quicker. Just give us little flashes of toughness.
Make it again, contextualize her. Where is she? What kind of what's going on with her in the greater sense, and rather than just with this one, with the vampire stuff. Who is she as a person? All that kind of stuff.
Did it work? Did her portrayal work better for you in the epilogue, where the year had passed and she wasn't quite so whiny?
I actually missed the epilogue.
Okay. Because basically the epilogue takes place a year after the last episode, 13, where she's sort of, without giving any spoilers away, where she's come into her own for what her role is. Mm-hmm. So when you get a chance, you can check that out. Let me know what you think. That might help out better with the portrayal, but I can see where you're coming from on that.
That's all I have for right now. I want to hear other stuff.
Okie dokie. So at this point, I think we'll now move into the question and answer part of our Post Mortem. I'm going to field questions first from our panel, and then if I may naturally find my questions answered anyway, but if not, I will ask whatever I think is missing, and we will go from there. So let's start the dialogue up with Miss Ande Richards.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Did you have a costumer to help you with the actors?
Our costumer, we did have a costumer to create the military jacket for the Dracula. Richard Raphael, who played the first Hunter, that's actually his stuff. He actually owned all of that gear, at least when he was in the big medieval nasty Ren Fair sort of outfit. But otherwise, the rest was costuming from people's closets, as has been the case for us every season.
Yeah, that's I think having someone help your actors with their actual everyday outfits. I think the actual costumes were good, but that might help your lead actress as well, is to define her with a hairstyle, with certain types of clothing. I think that will help her get her character forth better, so she doesn't appear so one-dimensional and whiny as Robb does. But you might want to think about your not just costuming but wardrobe, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, but on that wardrobe point, that's a great point, and I think that that would help by the whole, like I said, the contextualizing of the show in the Midwest. If this is going to take place in the Midwest for a reason, other than, I mean, it takes it there because that's where you are. But I mean, if you turn it into a choice, then make these the Midwestiest people you've ever seen. I mean, look at True Blood. It doesn't have to take place in the South, but it takes place in the South. That's a place where you wouldn't normally see a story about vampires necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But they take it to a certain degree that you could take to a certain degree too. I mean, I know you've got Midwest fashions laying around.
Well, as it turns, see, that's part of the thing that's tough for me. I think what you mean is you want like a stylized version of the Midwest because we're not.
No, I don't mean a stylized. I'm literally talking about like True Blood. True Blood isn't a stylized version of New Orleans. It's just it's supposed to be real. I mean, obviously it isn't, but I'm just saying. Yeah, I think just make them real, but not make them TV real. Make them movie real.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, because it's like being in the Midwest. It's like that is Midwest fashion. Like I don't know if you expect everyone to be wearing a flannel or a straw hat, but I see what you're saying, and I agree with you to sort of stylize it for the show and bring it TV real.
I'm saying shirts with collars, costumer stuff. People don't generally look good in just t-shirts and jeans, which is why you hardly ever see people wear jeans on TV.
Well, James Dean made a career of it. Of course, that was back in the 1950s. So yeah, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that was a definite choice. But he wore a jacket because it had a collar.
There it is. That's true. And so the Fonz. Mm-hmm. I think what you're saying is the Fonz should be in Vampirism Bites.
I think something with some structure, just like the Fonz.
All right, I like it. I like that. Any thoughts on that question, Allison?
No, I mean I agree. I did have some problems with a few of the outfit choices, but I also kind of chalked it up to probably nobody was really paying a ton of attention to that. But I agree. I agree with both Ande and Robb about that.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Ande, do you have any other questions for me?
It's just another observation because I hadn't seen the prior seasons. When I was watching it initially, and I don't mean to be insulting, but I almost thought, and this probably goes to what Robb was saying, I almost thought that you had inserted the people into the background when they were outside in the forest. I didn't realize they were actually in the forest.
James? I don't know how James does that, but that's the same thought I had when I first saw the show.
Okay, so I'm not alone. I just really thought
green screen these people into the forest.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Actually, that's like one of my biggest points that I think I want to make is, James, I think even like, I know I keep saying like I want more camera angles and I want, movement and stuff, but even just a simple establishing shot, establishing the geography of the space that we're in, and anytime a new character enters the space, let's establish where in the space they are, and then from there you can cut in and you don't have to come back out, but at least we get a feeling for who's there, where they are in the space, and I feel like then they would feel like they belong in the space.
Like a cinematography version of establishing the rules for the scene, if you will.
Well, yeah, just you can even do something simple like just run yourself back 30 yards and shoot a really long shot of two people standing in the woods, just so we know where they are in relationship to each other.
Okay, no, that's completely fair.
Just like in a movie.
James, there was one shot where your actor is coming into the scene, and there wasn't enough lead time with them coming into the frame, so it looked really bizarre. It literally looked like, oh, he's just digitally inserting this. I wasn't sure what it.
Do you know what scene it was? Because the one thing I will say is I've used the gag throughout the season. There's the classic gag of vampires magically just appearing in camera shots, and I've used that joke. I've used that, but it depends. Now there are scenes where I probably did it to where it didn't feel right, but there are certain ones like Belle is doing her thing with Vincent, and he's supposed to just pop up there because he's moved unnaturally fast. Or the scenes where the Dracula and her lieutenant magically pop up from the shoulders of Belmont. some of those are intentional because I'm sort of poking fun at that, but I think I know what you guys are saying with the unnatural parts and other characters.
You know, I'll review it, James, and I'll send you a note. I don't think it was any of those, but I'll let you know specifically so you can look at it.
I know one of them that happened that I remember. The two girls, Belle and her friend
Christy, yep.
Yeah, they were walking down the path in the woods, and they were walking up to someone, and that guy, he seemed to see them before they saw him, but yet they were right in front of him, it felt like. So it was
okay, I see what you're saying.
You know, like, I was like, does he not see them, or do they not see him standing right there, and then suddenly they were like, oh, someone's here, but they felt like they were just standing right there, so it just, because we didn't understand the space, it was really confusing.
I see, okay, so it's because it didn't sort of set the ground rules for where people were coming from where. Okay, I can certainly understand that.
Well, it's also that if you don't know how many people are in the scene to begin with, one person showing up isn't necessarily a surprise. We just feel like we haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, okay.
So if you have an establishing shot with one person standing in the forest all by themselves, and we can see they're all by themselves, and you cut to a shot of them close, and then somebody walks up behind them, that's creepy. But if you just cut to a shot of somebody standing there and somebody walks up behind them, you don't know if they're there together, you don't know if they're friends, you don't know what the relationship, you don't know if anything strange has happened.
Okay, I think you're referring to the guy with the axe, Salmon Axe.
I'm actually not referring to anything specific.
Okay. I mean, for Allison, it sounds like they may have been because there were two people walking up and then suddenly someone was sitting on a log.
It was when one of the hunters, the guy in the white, I think he was wearing a white button-down shirt or something, and he has the facial piercing.
Okay, yeah.
He's standing there, and then the two girls are kind of walking up the trail towards him, and it just that was the actual scene that I was talking about.
Okay, I see what you're talking about. Okay, so in other words, just establish where people are coming from and the sort of traffic flow of the space.
Yeah, but don't overdo it, because some people overdo it.
Oh, yeah, no, but I could see just a simple tracking shot or even like going up on a step ladder or something so it's far enough away to sort of catch everyone there and establish.
Yeah, just run 20 feet into the woods, turn around, shoot the thing. Don't have to mic it. You won't be able to see their faces anyway. You loop it in with the dialogue that you replace the dialogue.
Excellent. Okay, I really appreciate that. That's very helpful, actually. All right, do you have any other questions for us, Andy? Or anyone else at this point. If anyone just wants to bring up their question, go for it.
Can I bring up something that I thought was funny?
Absolutely.
Where he says that they're out in the park, and he says something about being isolated. About being isolated in this remote park. Oh, remote. Yeah, he says they're in a remote park, and behind them is a parking lot with a bunch of cars in it and some porta potties.
I think. Are you talking about when the litigator is approaching the first hunter and all those guys?
I don't remember, but it's early in the scene. It's early in one of the episodes where he talks about being in a remote park, but there's a parking lot right behind him with a bunch of cars in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when the hunters confronted the Dracula. I see what you're talking about now. Yes.
I've got a pro tip for you. Cinematography.
I'm all about pro tips.
Cinematographer. It's not really a pro tip. It's an amateur tip.
I'll take it. I've got no shame.
Don't put your actors directly in front of walls.
Okay.
Especially if you're lighting them with one light. Because it's just them standing in front of a shadow. I mean, unless it's a thing you're doing, but I don't think it was a thing you were doing. They were on the porch. Some scene on the porch.
Yeah, okay. I remember that, yeah.
Which also looked strange. It looked like they were standing in front of a painted set. Because of something. Because of the way the porch looked in the light.
Okay, yeah, that's the second time. I don't know, like the green screening effect from the woods or something, or...
Are you lighting people in the woods?
Yes, I am using a little bit of my light kit and reflectors in the woods when I need to, because there were certain patches that were too dark.
That's why it's looking that way, because the people are slightly yellower than their background.
Okay.
You're probably lighting them with yellow lights, incandescents.
Actually, no. I had a best score light kit that I was using that was LEDs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just a little 2 best score light kit. and they're LED lights, and then I also had reflectors. If anything, the reflectors are probably causing the yellow. It's those 5-in-1 reflectors.
Oh, they're slightly different color than the backgrounds.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like good green screen.
Hey, then I'll just claim that. I will make this hidden. I will edit it and make it seem as though I am a master of green screen. That's it.
And I was very disappointed that I couldn't read the calendar on the fridge.
Oh, that's a bummer because we actually put a little bit of Easter eggs in there. We actually had VB with arrows on one of the weeks in there.
Is that what that said? Because I looked. I stopped it, and it was on my TV. I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I think it's in the 3rd week of the calendar. The other stuff is just stuff we wrote down there, but we actually did put a little VB with arrows in the particular week. I'm sorry.
Just wasn't high res enough.
I've just let him down. I should have done the 1040p.
1080p. Did you shoot in 720?
I think it was slightly above that. I think it was down-resed when I put them up to YouTube to 720p. But no, we went up.
Are you shooting in 1080 interlaced or no? What 1080 progressive?
I think it's progressive. Yeah.
I think so too. I didn't see any interlacing lines. You would know if it was interlaced because your life would be hell in post-production.
Actually, I've discovered that once, so yeah, I made sure to avoid that whenever possible.
Yeah, it sucks.
I had another thought. I think vampires and the reason, at least for me, when I watch movies or shows with vampires, and what makes them scary, besides them suddenly being there next to somebody, is the way they move. And I felt like, mostly with Belle also, but when she's hissing or showing her teeth, I felt like it was, the camera doesn't move at all. We don't get a close-up of her doing that, and it kind of felt silly and not scary. And I don't know if we're...
That was the intent, because she's a brand new vampire, and she's bad at it. That's why Vincent is looking down at her and, shave your fangs. And that 3rd episode, actually, where she's sitting there, or the 2nd episode, where she's sitting there with her hands on her hips, hissing like a little kid, that's all on purpose. She's supposed to be a brat at that point.
I almost wanted to have a shot, a reverse shot of him or whoever she's doing that to, and where they're actually just kind of smirking at her. Give us a moment to laugh with you, I guess. Because I didn't know if I was supposed to find that, I didn't know if that was the intention.
Oh, okay. So a little, turn the subtlety down a little bit.
I don't know. For me, I felt that way.
Okay.
Well, part of the problem with him is that he's wearing the sunglasses, so you can't really see. He says it. He says his reaction, but you don't see it. Mm-hmm. Which is a theme, I think, in this show.
For Vincent, it is. Yeah, for Vincent, yeah, Vincent. Well, Vincent's supposed to be the Iceman, so that those aviators are definitely there on purpose. He's trying to put a wall up whenever he can.
Yeah, but it's yes. I think that there's certain things that might be better left, and I don't want to blame the actors or the directing. Actually, there's some stuff the actors just can't pull off, and I'm sure that they could pull it off if they had a shooting schedule that was easier. There's a reason why low-budget television, low-budget films look like they have worse acting in it than high-budget films and high-budget television. And it's not necessarily because you can pay the best actors. It's because you can sit there and shoot it until you get it right.
Yeah, you have more time to practice the technique over and over again.
You got more time. You got people who are getting paid to rehearse or paid to learn their stuff. So you gotta have to be careful. I think you're writing above your production. I think you're giving them too much dialogue that they then have to handle. And I don't necessarily think that they can handle all of it. And because it's dialogue and we don't see it, especially the old stuff, there was a story that one of them tells about the litigator about destroying the guy's mayoral race.
Yes.
That is an example of dialogue that doesn't need to exist.
Okay.
But, it's a cute little story, but if we can't see it or something, it'd be a cute thing to see. But to have it inserted almost as a a split infinitive in the middle of a scene, going. Oh, and this thing, and here we go again. It makes the audience, because all we're doing is listening. It's almost like a book on tape. It's hard for me to keep track.
Okay, so it was more like a speed bump to the point of the episode.
It's exactly a speed bump to the point of the episode, and it's cute. I mean, if we could see it, it'd be different. If we could see these guys and the history they have, if this was a big budget show,
it would be a montage, definitely.
It would be a montage, or it might even be your cold open to the scene where it's the mayor. We'd see this mayor running, and we'd see the stuff that happened to him, and then we'd be in this episode where they meet each other again. Hopefully not in just a public park, but someplace more grand if it's a big budget. We'd see that, so we could feel their history and know their history. But you don't have that luxury. I don't think any of us. None of us. Allison's probably got the biggest budgets of all of us, as far as I know.
This isn't about comparing how big budgets are, all right? We're not going to get into the budget size comparison. That is inappropriate, sir.
But none of us can afford that, so I would just leave it out, or put it someplace where it's not going to get in the middle of whatever it is that you're doing.
So almost like if I were to do like an aside. Like a mini episode or something, it would be better there, just as long as it doesn't speed bump.
No, it would be better in a scene where those two people were specifically talking to each other about something.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because what happens now is you've got a lot of people, and in every scene, the way you've written them, you've got one person who's telling a story, and then everybody else is kind of commenting on it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's a little too expositional. So yeah, I'd work on individual relationships. I don't know what people's relationships with each other are. I know what their relationship to the story is, but I don't necessarily see the history between people.
That's fair. I see what you're saying. I can understand that.
Except for Belle and her friend. And the women you've got. The hunting parties are definitely superfluous.
Okay.
By design, I think, right? You wanted to make them incompetent?
Yeah, it's either there's, the malevolent sort of litigator who's trying to do all of his plots, and definitely in the case of Simon, he's supposed to be a boob and a schmuck, and he's in that sort of crappy place is where he's dropped into the worst thing he could possibly dropped into. So I would say more, I don't know about incompetence in the fact that he's a moron, but incompetence in that he was not meant to be involved in any of this, but he's right in the middle of it. Right. From letting Belle go in the season 0 to constantly running into her and stuff like that. I would say it's more incompetence by accident than by design, but it's the same thing. They're supposed to be boobs and morons and jerks. Yeah, except for Kelvin the Lionhearted. Everyone loves Kelvin the Lionhearted.
Right, but I think we only see them, we don't get to see them, we see them either in battle or talking about battle. They don't really prepare. They don't do anything else. So I think if you want the dialogue the way you have it, and I don't know, again, what your resources are, a scene of them someplace preparing for battle, getting their little swords ready. I like his little tiny swords and knives, by the way. Getting that stuff ready, just finding little places, themes for them, little things for them to do to kind of epitomize their character within the larger story.
So more context.
Every scene should be a microcosm of the entire story, in my opinion. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
James, can I ask you a question? So in regards
go for it.
To what Robb is saying, did you write bios for all of the characters?
Yeah, there's bios actually up on the main website itself. Every character has a bio giving a bit of their history and their major interactions as it comes to what you've seen on camera. Without all the little, all the stuff, the speed bumps, if you will. That feels most comfortable to say, but without all that stuff, we've given their major interactions with each other and kind of cliff notes to, this person met with this person, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, I looked at the website briefly. I didn't get to read all of the history because I think what Robb is saying is that he wants to like understand the world that they're coming from, and not just that they're vampires and hunters and they want to kick each other's asses. That there is some context for them. So that would happen in their history. That would happen in where they grew up, like what school did they go to, what does this town look like, where do they eat, and then I think that's how you would work them into those different parts of the world, as Rob was saying, that we need to see some diversity in their interactions.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just speaking to creating their world. I was just wondering how deep their histories were, because I think that would help him to get them interacting in different ways if there's a history to go back on.
Well, and I think that, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the history, but I don't necessarily need to see the history from the past. I need to see the history in the present, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If there's a history there, you use that to create the present. We don't need to go back to 5th grade, but
right. How do these people have dinner together?
Mm-hmm.
How do they travel together? Do they, does one person ask for directions and one person always hates the other person? It's those little things, the little everyday things, where we get to see the history, and those everyday things are missing in this. We don't get to see them, and I hate soapy stuff. It drives me crazy. I always want people to get to the point. But I think that your story is so large that we need those little moments away from it that build on it but aren't it.
So it feels to me like in a three-dimensional sort of story world, I'm missing that third dimension. It's the space in between, if you will.
You're pretty much telling us where you're going, and it's opening in a linear fashion. It jumps around, but yes, it's on one timeline, and it's not a web.
Okay, so instead of just showing the points, show the space between the points as well.
Well, there's other ways to tell us the point without telling us the point.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, James.
Go for it.
In terms of all the posts, are you doing all of the posts yourself, including sound design and mix and everything?
Yes, yep. That's the effect of the number of people we have around here able to do that, stuff like that. So yeah, I was definitely wearing all the hats on post-production.
Okay. In terms of sound design, I feel like I come to like and enjoy the sound effects and the things that you're using in there, but then I also found that was inconsistent. And so there were times when, someone's hitting someone and I get a sound effect, and then other times I don't get one at all. And I wasn't sure, it felt like a mistake. And things like the headbutts and the swords and the punching and the smacking and the falling, I felt like either go 100% with it or don't. But then when I'm missing one, it felt really odd and took me out of it. So was there a method behind the sound design?
Well, for me, actually, part of that I was able to flick. The one thing I love about Blip is the fact that you can change something and then put it back into the same exact slot without losing all the views and all that information. But with YouTube, there's no mercy. But on the flip side, YouTube, I discovered, is where 90% of the audience is going, even when I do Blip stuff first, and I push that everywhere. Blip is just not as used as YouTube, and you can see part of that with the way Blip has started paring down shows and telling shows which ones are or aren't be there. It looks like they're changing their strategy. So on some of the Blip episodes, actually some of my actors brought up some of the same types of things with sound effects. And I was able to fix it over there, but when you go to the YouTube releases, it is exactly the way it was originally. So there were certain ones where just some of the sound effects were a little too Tex Avery, which you probably heard watching the YouTube version. Some of the punches were just a little too, yeah, exactly, like wacky. And then you'll notice that as you move forward, I sort of learned from that, and then they started getting a little better and sounding like, foot to the ribs, fist to the, an actual sternum, not fist to a wacky slide trombone. or America's Funniest Home Videos. So definitely it was a matter of me learning, like, it was brought up to me by some of my actors, and they're like, it just sounds a little cartoonish, a little weird. And some of them got fixed on YouTube. They are as they were intended, but I definitely, some of that was brought to my attention. It made my choices in later episodes a lot better.
Well, maybe, that kind of brings me to another point is, do you screen these or have people watch them before you put them up? I mean, you're taking on a lot on yourself to do everything in post. It's the same thing with writing. Have someone else read what you write. Same thing here. Have someone watch, have multiple people watch, get feedback, do a little test screening. I mean, we do that with feature films all the time. So why not do that with a web series?
Definitely. No, definitely. And this, again, with particular events and calamities and tragedies that happened, I think that definitely affected it. In the later episodes, probably starting at about the 1/4 point of the season, during season 2, I had always given early links to the cast and everything, encouraging them to watch it like a couple weeks before. Like, hey, check this out. Let me know what you think. Does something sound wrong? Is something weird? Do you notice any errors? Stuff like that. So I did have a peer review system, just with the particularly unlucky, tragic nature of this particular year. It sort of threw all schedules out. And I didn't get to do that, honestly, in a way I should have. I can definitely, own up to that. If I would have done that more, I would have caught things like the sound effects earlier before even going to YouTube. And it's definitely something that I should make a point to do more often than not. Or even if it's having to, extend the release schedule a little bit, maybe push it back a little bit more just so I can get back into that rhythm and catch those kind of things earlier.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised that you made this so quick after all the horrible stuff. I don't know if I could have done that.
Well, it was probably a way to get your mind off of the bad things, right?
Actually, it didn't work like that for me. To be completely honest, this was a very simple case too. My mom would have been very disappointed in me if I quit doing that. And I would have lost the entire season. I mean, everything. We couldn't postpone it for a couple months or any of that. The schedule was so intricate in the first place before I lost my mom that little things could have thrown it off track. But after that happened, I just knew. I just honestly thought my mom would be so disappointed if I just gave up. So I pressed forward. For me, it was there was no other choice. I definitely was not going to let myself down, to let her down. The cast we were all excited about it. We felt good about the improvements in the script and things like that, and I couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of production help? I mean, not post-production, but production help?
Yeah, usually what happens, this year was a lot better than last year. There were still certain points where I didn't have enough, and I can admit that. But this year there was a lot more where cast members that weren't shooting at that particular time or day, they would come by and help out. I would have extra hands on the other camera, extra hands helping with reflectors, with lights.
Do you have anybody that could help you with scheduling?
Well, scheduling itself, for us, considering the relatively compact size of the group, at least location-wise, it was pretty easy. And we all were sort of helping with scheduling. When I was doing something else, there were other cast members were always calling and emailing each other and sort of double and triple checking, confirming all that. So kind of organically, the whole cast sort of did help with that in a lot of ways, especially when the calamities started happening.
Right, but I mean, even without the tragedy, you should think about having somebody dedicated to helping you out. A production
also acting in it.
Yeah, an AD, something like that. Because I know you'll probably try to do this all by yourself, and it's too much. That's why
I'm coming to learn that. I mean, I'm coming to learn that. I didn't take on as much as I did in season 2, but I mean, if I compare it to season 2, it was still about 89 to 92%, which is ridiculous. But it was still, I eased up and got a little bit of help on it. Again, I think part of it this year was I was sort of driven from events, definitely, to just sort of like plow through and get it done. And I don't have a fear of like, oh, it won't get done if I don't do it. part of my thing is like I already feel like I'm exploiting a bunch of actors enough. It's just that's how I am, man. I know I got to get over it and become. Become
See,
the director.
They wouldn't do it if they didn't want to.
That's correct.
I certainly understand that. That's just my thing. That's the hang up I got to get over because that's stuff I need to do in a director and producing role. I got to sort of get over that and just know there are people that are willing to do it, so have them do it and not be such a whiny little jerk.
Well, they want direction from you. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to be there, and if they're there, they're looking to you for direction and guidance and information. And so it would be a disservice to them to not give that, to not, take control and put things in place and give them information. And I feel like if you also brought somebody else in to help with the scheduling and the organizing of things with you, writing, directing, and doing all post-production is plenty. You don't need to produce as well, or at least have an associate producer or some sort of, AD of some sort. I mean, we don't make our stuff by ourselves. There's no way. When I decided to direct an episode of Solo, I did not produce that episode. I knew that I couldn't do both things at the same time because I was going, something was going to suffer if I did that. So it's just, if this is a team effort, a group effort, films and TV shows don't get made by themselves. They don't get made by one person. And that's okay. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, and I know that looking back on Vampire Zombie Werewolf, the things that didn't work for me and my directing or my acting, terrible, as when I was having to do more stuff by myself. Because of Steve and Tanya being in makeup, we had no crew either. But you just have to focus. You want to be able to focus on the creative parts. I assume that your favorite part isn't scheduling the park, right?
Well, it isn't scheduling the park. For me, I like the logistical side of it, but again, like you guys are saying, it's splitting my focus over where I need to put my energy the most. For the jobs I need to do the most, so I can definitely see where.
You just want to free up your brain to think about where you're putting the camera in the scene, and the creative aspects of that, rather than the technical aspects of that. And you'll be a lot happier as an artist, I think.
I can certainly see that. I can see the value in that, definitely. Again, I think it's just a matter of. Oh no, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say one of the things that helped me because I years ago, Allie and I actually got together to produce a documentary series, and I had a good concept and I had a good idea of what I wanted to do, and we plowed forward. God knows what we did, but I had to take a step back and actually join some groups and read some books and take some classes to actually understand some of the things Robb was talking about establishing shots and medium shots and close-ups and angles, lighting, and just knowing that I don't have to write, produce, direct, and host or act in everything that I do all at once. And it wasn't coming from a point of ego, it was just coming from a point of not knowing that other people could do those jobs. And that it'll actually be better if somebody else takes on some of those roles. And I'm still learning that. I still have to let go of some things and learn how to communicate with people that, hey, maybe you could get the permit. and you can do SAG so that I can actually, break down the script properly or talk to someone about funding, which is probably another thing that you have to do with your marketing and your fundraising. So you did a really good job for taking on so many different aspects of production, but you need to sort of educate yourself a bit more and then delegate responsibility.
And I think we all agree. The reason why we're saying this is because we all feel like you're there. Almost, you're ready to take it. You're ready to go over the edge and go to a whole different level with all of this stuff. And so we're trying to give you little nudges. Just past that, you're almost past that line. You're almost there.
I'm almost there. That's actually very nice to hear from you guys. Thank you.
You're ready to do it. You're ready to do it. It's all up to you.
Yay!
Yay!
Here, wait, ready?
Ah, yes. That applause, that's $1.2 million of Google R&D. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep.
All right. Do you guys have any other questions for me?
That was everything I had.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a couple questions for you guys, if I may. Let me pull up my magical list here. Let's see. Right off the bat, I guess the things I want to focus on the most are strengths and weaknesses. I wanted to go down the line and see what episode worked the best for you, what you liked the best, and then what episode you felt was the weakest. And you'll go ahead and give me a little bit of why. You know, this is definitely the good, bad, ugly, and innovative parts. But I really like to know, what worked and why, so that way I can sort of tear those apart and bring that into other areas. But I also love to know, hey, where did James suck? Where did he fail? So that way I can learn from that experience as well. So we will start with Ande whenever she's ready.
Yeah, I just think, and I'll go to your writing, because I think your writing is witty. But for me, like I said initially, it worked better when it was a group dialogue and people bouncing off of each other. And maybe that was because when it was just the two-person scene, they were kind of static, so I couldn't enjoy the conversation as much. So your strength is your writing. I mean, you can always edit, but I think your strength is your writing, but your weakness is creating texture and layers within the scene to bring it to life.
Okay.
And so I liked episode 4. I think is the one where there was a large group of people and they were kind of bantering back and forth.
Okay,
and then,
that was the Belmont Stakes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the episode before that, I had some trouble viewing actually episode 2. I don't know why. I watched episode 1 okay, which was kind of almost the weakest for me, maybe because Belle was featured in that one, and it's not that she's so horrible, but she needs some work fortifying that character. And
okay.
It might be a one-on-one with you and her, and talking about her history and getting some wardrobe and other things in there to help her along. But, yeah, so episode 2 for some reason kept going away, and I kept having to go back to the episode, and I don't know what that was about, if that was a YouTube thing. So I'm not sure, but episode 1 was sort of weak for me, and so was episode 3, I think.
Now, when it comes to those one-on-one scenes, do you think had I made them more fluid or more connecting in the way we discussed earlier, do you think that would have helped it, or do you still think that the writing still would have felt the same, even if I had done everything more correctly to connect everyone to that shot?
No, it definitely would have helped. It definitely would have helped.
Okay. Important bonus question for you. Are those the worst puns you've ever seen as you got through the titles?
I love the puns.
Yes!
I loved it. I love the taming of the screw. We love it.
Yeah, I was hoping to see how many people got the Shakespearean pun.
Oh, yeah.
I
was a theater major. I totally got it.
All the people that get that joke make me happy and are my friends, so I'm just going to say that now. That's that. I reached deep for that one. I used Don Henley songs and Shakespeare. I had no shame.
I love Don Henley as well, so there you
go.
Those all worked for me. I'm sorry, I should have.
You also used medieval puppetry.
Yes, I did use medieval puppetry. Yes, Punch and Duty. And haha, I said duty, says Robb Goki in the background. I know that's going on. All right, we'll go over to Allison.
I know you probably want different information from me, but I totally agree with Ande. I think that the first couple of episodes were the weakest, which, obviously, I was going to sit through all of them because that was my intention. But I feel like, it's a struggle for me, too. I know we had a struggle with Cross the Capital with the episode 1 and just really wanting to make sure that we're grabbing our audience and keeping them there. You've got really only a little bit of time to bring someone in keep them interested. And I feel like episode 1 didn't do that for me, and I was concerned watching episode 1 that the rest of the season would feel the same way, and it didn't. It actually got better for me, and I don't know if you shot this in order, or if you shot it out of order, but it felt like it was shot in order because I felt like as we got into the season, it got better.
Actually, we did do block shooting, and that's only because I discovered that when it comes to efficiency, nothing beats block shooting for at least, especially with the schedules we had this particular time. But it's just a lot more efficient when we can get a bunch of scenes in one location. Totally. And considering we had to use more than our share of backup days that were scheduled, we had to go over that by quite a bit. It's always block shooting all the way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and so then I'm not positive why the earlier episodes felt that way to me, but I felt like, maybe it was just a lot of exposition, and we weren't really getting to the meat of what was going to happen in the season. And it was a lot more Belle early on, I think, too. I agree that I just kind of felt like it was a lot of her and a lot of repetitive whining that was happening, and that was hard to watch. And, it might be something that turn somebody away early on, and they're not going to stick around for some of the other stuff that you have later on that's more intriguing.
Okay. Mr. Padgett?
Yeah, so I don't know which one I'm trying to remember. I don't actually, my brain doesn't work out the breaks on the episodes. So I don't know which is the strongest. I like the ones towards the end of the season the best. Those episodes I thought were stronger. And episode 3 was what I'm going to say was the weakest for me, and that's just because it's, other than the way it opens, there's just two people standing in the woods talking to each other. And that's, I want them to do something. I don't know what, but something.
Just some sort of kinetic motion.
Yeah, because it's not a problem with the story. I don't have a problem with the story. I don't have a problem with your dialogue, other than I think there's too much of it. I mean, the dialogue is fine. There's just too much of it. And the story is fine. The characters I find fine. I just want them defined. As a writer, I can see past and I think you're assuming lots of people are. I can see past what's going on in the episodes, and I can hear the script, and I can actually... I'm kind of running a parallel movie in my brain while I'm hearing the dialogue. And so I can see what you're doing. It's just I can't see what you're doing.
Yeah, it's just not apparent on screen.
Yeah, I can see it in my mind. It's just not on the screen. So, yeah, I think the dialogue is fine. I think that's one of your strengths is the dialogue, and I think you know it, which is why you write too much of it. And the weakness is the cinematography.
Okay.
But the sound was much better this season.
Yes, first of all, no crickets. I made sure to exterminate all crickets within a 20 square mile radius. We got rid of that. And actually, this particular year, I had 2 directional mics. I've been using... Yes, exactly. I've been using stereo mics for the previous seasons. This year, I actually got a couple of directional mics, and the sound improved massively.
Yeah, get rid of that stereo mic crap. You don't want that stuff.
I was able to use the stereo mics to pick up ambient sound to like plug in in a bottom layer when I had to do certain sound editing. But otherwise, yeah, the directional mics all the way. Just the sheer improvement was immediate for me when I was editing them. There was no going back there.
It's nice, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. It's like, wow, it's really nice that it eliminates all the other crap that got in the way for the past 2.5 years.
And you can hear what they're saying and focus on it.
And it's when I use Isotope to clean out certain things, it's a lot easier to get rid of things like the traffic and stuff without, hacking out their actual voices as well. So, the improvement was massive there.
Totally.
Yeah, much better.
How did the music work for you guys overall?
Where do you get it?
Part of it is, at least when it comes to the main theme and the end credits theme, which we've used in a couple episodes, I think.
No, I know what that comes from.
Yeah, that's Kettle Strand. We have music composer Jeff Arwady, who did a large chunk of it, and then I also had royalty-free music that I had purchased as well from, I think the company is Footage Firm, I think is the one that does it. But that's the I'd say it's about 60-40, 60 in favor of our music composer Jeff R. Wadey, and 40% is the royalty-free stuff. And then we also had another guest artist in Daniel Tidwell. We used his Very Bloody Tears for the big fight scene between Dracula and the hunters there in episode 5.
I thought the music was fine. The only criticism I have of the music is the backwards music.
Okay. Used it too much, or the effect didn't work for you?
It's just too much. When you use it sparingly, I like it. But when I hear big, huge string of it, at least if you're going to do it, make sure it's not too rhythmic. Make it not arrhythmic so that I don't hear the swat, 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 swat over and over again. That starts playing in my head.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Just sort of clip off the ends, if you will, where the fingers hit the keys. Because that's all that was a piano piece backwards.
Right, yeah.
So,
and
yeah.
It got a little too percussive.
Okay.
I mean, it's great when it's percussive in small doses, but when there's one big, really long section that you ran it over, and I started paying attention to it.
Okay, so I got to hit and run. I got you. Hit and run, hit and run.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me go down my list here. All right. How did the overall narrative? I know from the second season, I remember Matt Newcomb saying that I tried to make the sort of main plot a little too large. It was too vacuous. I know from a couple comments tonight that I didn't fix that completely, but did it feel like a more focused main plot this time around? And in Andy's case, did it feel like it was still too vacuous for you? Or did it feel like clearly we were heading to a specific endpoint, if it felt clear enough?
It felt like you were heading to an endpoint.
Yeah, it seemed clear to me. In the beginning I wasn't sure exactly who people were, but I think it became very clear to me who they were and what their objectives were. So, there's a lot of information there, and sometimes it feels like you might get lost, but I think overall it was clear.
Does it feel like part of it got lost because of the speed bumps we mentioned earlier tonight? Did that sort of kill momentum when you were trying to focus on what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I think it's more about just being able to keep active listening, because it really, like when Rob said, it's like an audiobook. I really, truly, at one point, I was thinking that, like I almost, and you don't want this, but I could look away and still have the same effect if I was looking at the screen, because it was so much talking and not a lot happening on the screen. And so
was part of that feel exacerbated by the two shots being too static?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And so for me, it was easy to tune out or to look away. And then that would cause me to kind of lose the story or lose what they're talking about right then, because I wasn't given new visuals to kind of keep me there.
Okay, that's definitely fair.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, what do you think?
I thought actually the story was nice and small. I felt like this story was much smaller. The dialogue was too much. But that's part of the reason why the dialogue really, it felt again like too much, is because the story is so small now that people keep saying the same things over and over again. And you keep saying them in different ways, but they're pretty much saying the same things over and over again, which is fine. It's fine to reiterate the points because, yes, the people were much more clear. I understood who people were and what they were doing. I didn't understand who they were in relation to each other necessarily. I didn't know, actory stuff. I didn't understand how they felt about each other and that kind of stuff, unless they told me, which a lot of times they did. But I wanted to see it, not be told. I think that's just my thing. Is I wanted to see it. I didn't want to be told. But the story was nice and small.
Okay, well, when compared to the second season, this question for both you and Allison. I will go with you first. When compared to the second season, what felt like was improved the most for you from your experience as a viewer?
Oh, so go ahead.
Okay. I just really think I feel like you learned a lot, and you took, with the things the mistakes you made, you were able to like drastically improve all of those things. I think that, you really listened to some of the things that we told you, and you were able to kind of refine what you were trying to do. I think technically it was better, so it was easier to watch and to stay with, visually, and, the sound was, a huge help. I think that, when you don't notice the sound, that's a good thing. And I think one of the biggest things that I noticed last time was that there were so many sound issues, and there were very few moments during this that I thought like, oh, I can't, she's not mic'd, or I can't hear that line. But when sound is good, you don't notice it, and I think that was a huge improvement over last time.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because it was not until almost all the way through the first episode that I realized that I could hear. I had no problem with what people were saying. I wasn't even paying attention to the sound because I could actually hear it.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's way improved, and your cinematography, as much as I've bagged on it tonight, has also gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
And your post has gotten better. I know that you're getting all vignette crazy there on in your post production.
I love me some vignette, not gonna lie.
It's a fun way to make it look like you shot it on purpose. Don't go too crazy. But yeah, overall, that's why I think that's why we're telling you all this stuff now, is because I personally feel like you're about this close to getting it. I didn't go to film school, and you have to learn some of the stuff on your own. I don't, and I think you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have any final thoughts, any final questions they'd like to share with us this evening?
No, I just said I'm glad that you did it. I'm glad you shot season 3 and got it done. I think your mom would be proud, and I'm excited that you were able to pull through it all and to put this out there, and I'm excited to see what else you come up with.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Miss Allison.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the last thing I'm going to do with our round table here before we end it for the night is, if you can, give me 2 or 3 bullet points for areas I should focus on the most in my next project from your point of view. We'll start with Miss Ande Richards.
Oh, 2 or 3 bullet points. Okay. So I would work on blocking. Having your actors within a scene and blocking out movement for them. One drinking a glass of water, and one's checking their phone or writing something, and one's slapping their knee, or whatever business it is you're going to give them that fits with their characters. I would work on that just to give some texture to your scene, so that you don't just have talking heads or people standing there listening while the other person's talking. And let's see, what else? I like your dialogue. I know Rob was saying it's talky, but I think if you really work on the blocking and giving your characters business and giving them actual spaces, sets to work in, that will help elevate your dialogue. I would work on the cinematography a bit more, the lighting. I had no issue with sound, so if I didn't have an issue, that meant it was strong. Because you only notice sound and bad music if it's bad, but if the music's good and the sound's good, we never comment. So those were on point. What else would I want you to work? Wardrobe. I think you should get someone who understands how wardrobe works within a script. And that will help your actors get into character. Clothing helps actors, hairstyles help actors, and sometimes vocal mannerisms help actors. So those are things I would keep in mind as well. And again, if you start delegating, that's my third point. If you can delegate some responsibilities, then you'll have more time to focus on your actors and working on those details and therefore getting better performances out of them.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll go to Allison.
Yeah, I agree about the blocking. I think you know, having them have actions in the scene. Don't just stand there and, you know, have them move, have them interact with the space. I think the second thing would be establish the space that we're in, so that the audience understands the space. And then, you know, the third thing, I think that, you know, if you are able, I agree with delegation, if you're able to bring in a few more people, I think it'll make all the difference. It'll alleviate you from the things that you shouldn't be worrying about, and I think the entire project will benefit from that. So I think those are the biggest points for me.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Rob, final thoughts here?
I agree with all of that. Which is something, you know, something we all need to do, right? My points would be contextualize the story and contextualize the characters, and yes, the dialogue wouldn't seem like so much if they were doing walk and talks or doing anything. I mean, getting together and picking out shoes. I mean, I don't care what they're doing as long as they're doing something. And as long as it makes sense within the context of what their wants and needs are, as long as it's a microcosm of the larger picture, context and clarity, conciseness. I know that the flowery dialogue is something that you like to do. I do too. I overwrite my stuff. But if you could say it in a few less words, I would say it in a few less words, and still get the point across, and still get to do the style that you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think at least with your viewpoints you brought up tonight, it's more of a case of maybe trimming a little more of the fat away from the dialogue. Yeah.
And don't have scenes that are 8 pages long. That's just. I mean, I hate to say that, because as an artist, I'm like, screw that, I'll have scenes as long as I freaking want them. But an 8-page scene is a long scene.
Something has to change, though. It's like, change the space, change the, you know, have them walk into a different space if it's going to be that long, because then it actually is a different
scene, right, yeah.
Location and time, that denotes a new scene. So change something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what that's what I would say.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I think that is a pretty good round discussion on the show Vampirism Bites Season 3. You can catch the show on its own YouTube channel, Vampirism Bites Series. I will add some annotations to this later on that people can click on. And while we're talking about annotations, let's also help promote some of our guests, our panelists' works here. Ande, can you tell us where people can find Good Times?
Actually, Good Times is on Blip TV.
All right, we'll put up a note on annotation for that. Just Good Times? Is it any particular title to it, or just?
It's Good Times, the web series, because there was a 70s sitcom called Good Times.
I was a fan. Yeah, I was a fan of Good Times. Yeah, exactly. I was just like, what?
That was my password for everything was Dynamite.
Did you wear the bucket hat while at the same time you got that Jimmy Walker kind of thing going on?
No, I didn't do that.
Oh, thank God. Thank God. All right. Allison, I know your newest project was Cost of Capital. Where can people view that?
It's on YouTube, or well, that's probably the best place. If you look up Cost of Capital TV, you'll find it everywhere it is.
Okay, and there's also an annotation for that. And Rob, where would you like to point people towards? Point towards VZW right now, or what's Cater Pictures?
Yeah, Cater Pictures, KATR. Pictures.com. Yeah.
Alrighty, and we'll also put a link up to the YouTube channel right here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I certainly appreciate it. I learned a lot from this.
Totally.
If you would like to have your show as part of the Post Mortem series, you can write me at tightrope@gmail.com. There's another magical annotation right there for you. We're looking for new shows coming up on our slate so far. We have Cost of Capital, which is produced by Allie. We're also going to have So Far in the Queue, Pretty the Series, and we also may potentially have Suck and Moan. But we're looking for new shows to add all the time, so if you want to bring it in, hopefully you can see by this isn't a sycophant contest, and this isn't an insult parade. This isn't Stephen Cowell's hate machine. We're here to have honest discussions and sort of break these series down and see what works and what doesn't. So hopefully you enjoyed yourselves tonight. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you very much to our panelists for this episode. That is just perfectly timed. That is another $2 million of Google R&D well spent right there. And for Tightrope Entertainment, I am James Fernandez, your host and the showrunner. Thank you very much, and we will catch you all on the flip side of the internet.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
And he has an eye patch, and I quit.